Yeah, very clear. Yeah.
So, first of all, I must start off by thanking you a lot for agreeing to do this. It's a great show support. It's a great pleasure. So thank you so much. So
You're welcome. Yeah.
so let's get to it directly. Let me invite my colleague and head of the department, Dr. Professor Rashmi S. Pillai, to just start off this event with a short welcome address. Over to you, Rashmi ma'am.
Thank you, Rakesh. I mean, this is a wonderful evening. We have been waiting for this for such a long time. And thank you, Professor Guha, for joining us today. Thank you for accepting the invitation. And it's great to have you here. So let me begin by welcoming all our participants to this wonderful evening. And this is the final session of the international webinar on reading cricket. We started off with Dr. Shawik Naha on cricket and history, moving on to Dr. Claire Westall, who talked about cricket and literature. And then we had Dr. Nasim Manatakaran with us, who talked about nationalism and its effect on cricket in India. And today it's such an honor to have Professor Guha with us. Before I move on to giving a bio about Professor Guha, let me welcome the members of our advisory committee. His Beatitude Moran Basilius Cardinal Climus Catholicus, the manager of our institution, Reverend Dr. Matthew Manakarakavil Episcopo, the principal of our college, Reverend Father Johnson G., and a former head of the department, Sujas Manjarabal ma'am. And I also welcome my colleagues, Dr. Rakesh Ramamoorthy, who is definitely the coordinator of this webinar series, the joint coordinator, Ms. Lalita Joseph, and my other colleagues, the members of the organizing committee, Dr. Suraj Kumar, Ms. Padma Chandran, and Mr. Arun M. George. So the chief guest of the day, Professor Ramachandra Guha, doesn't need any introduction. Public intellectual, biographer, writer, historian, you name it. He has taught in world-renowned universities and institutions like the University of Yale, Oslo, Stanford, and the Indian Institute of Science. He's been a fellow of the Wissenschafts College, Jus Berlin, and served as an Indo-American Community Chair Visiting Professor at the University of California at Berkeley. Professor Guha's works cover a wide range of themes like the environment, anthropology, and social history, including the social history of Indian cricket. His books and essays have been translated into several languages. He's been accredited with prizes like the UK Cricket Society's Literary Award and the Leopold Heide Prize of the American Society of Environmental History. He has numerous works to his credit, but I'll just read out a few. Makers of Modern India, Patriots and Partisans, Gandhi Before India, A Corner of a Foreign Field, and his most recent work, The Commonwealth of Cricket, a lifelong love affair with the most subtle and sophisticated game known to mankind. Before we move on, I shall just read a few lines from his work, which illustrates his deep emotional attachment with the sport. I quote, "I cannot easily go to sleep, days that come with greater regularity as one advances into the 60s. I'll put myself to rest by visualizing the two greatest and gifted bowlers of my time. These are Shane Warne and Wasim Akram," unquote. With this, I cordially welcome you, Professor Guha, to our webinar session. Before we move on to the conversation, I would like to read a short bio of my dearest colleague, Dr. Rakesh Ramamoorthy. He is the apt person to do this because he has published academic articles on cricket in leading journals, is serving on the editorial board of the prestigious rural journal, The International History of Sport, and has also written for the 2017 and 2018 issue of the Wisden Indian Almanac. And his doctoral degree is the study of select cricket narratives from contemporary India and Pakistan. So with this, I welcome all the participants, and once again, I welcome you, Professor Guha, to this wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you.
Hello, sir. So shall we do this?
Absolutely. Let's begin.
So before we start, I may request everyone to, if it's all right with you, please move on to the gallery view, all the participants that is. because because I'll be spotlighting the two of us. So for people in gallery view, we'll be able to see both of us simultaneously. So I have done my bit. So it's for the viewers. So if you do that, that will be perfect. Okay. Okay. So before we start off the discussion, before I pose my questions to Professor Guha, I thought it would be good if I give a brief 1-minute introduction to the book, because for those among the audience who haven't had a chance to go through it just yet. So this is the wonderful piece of work that we are speaking about today. It's titled The Commonwealth of Cricket, a lifelong love affair with the most subtle and sophisticated game known to mankind.
Known to humankind. Known to humankind.
Humankind. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, and that's a very vital distinction. I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yes. At that point, I was on autopilot, and my yes. As the subtitle indicates, it's a fan memoir. It's all about the love for the game, and the game is described with such love, full of such beautiful anecdotes. It recounts Professor Guha's early memories of watching cricket, of hearing about cricket, of playing cricket at the club and college level, and of his admiration for cricketers across the globe, and that is very pertinent. Towards the end of the book's innings, it speaks about two very important things. One is his brief but very important stint as a member of the Committee of Administrators, which was tasked with implementing the Loda Committee reforms, reforming the BCCI, supposedly reforming the BCCI, I should say. And secondly, the transformations that came over his own fandom over the years. The book is all about cosmopolitan fandom, but more on that later. So this is what I can say about the book, in a nutshell. But that is kind of like one of those T20 highlights that we see these days. We get to see nothing of the essence. So I have done whatever can be done in a 1-minute summary. So Professor Guha, maybe start off with the title.
Yeah.
Because the subtitle has been widely discussed.
Mm-hmm.
But the title perhaps not so much.
Yeah.
Especially the significance of the word Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And I was very struck by that, because am I right in assuming that you're using the word in the political science sense of a community for greater good?
I'm using it in my own way. It has a very distant resonance to the British Commonwealth, but a very distant one, because cricket is essentially a game played in England and its former colonies, unlike, shall we say, football, which was also invented in England but is played across the world, or golf, which was invented in Scotland, is played across the world. But essentially, by Commonwealth of Cricket, I mean to indicate that my book is capacious. It's not only about international cricket. It's about club cricket, school cricket, college cricket. It's about cricket in a small town, in a large, like Dehradun, where I grew up, a large metropolis like Delhi, where I played inter-college cricket, an epicenter of Indian cricket, such as Bangalore, where I now live, and of course, as you point out, cricketers from across the world. And it's also about, aspects of cricket that don't often get adequate attention, such as the art of bowling. So in a sense, it's you could say it's and also it describes my different elements of my own participation. I participated in cricket as a player, as a fan, as a writer, as a debater, as an administrator. So, and I just thought, it would be a kind of to encapsulate the fact that this book works at different levels. It's about cricket, in a small town, in a metropolis, overseas. That's why I chose that title.
Okay, that's very interesting. So one thing that really struck me is how deeply this book is steeped in the traditions of cricket literature. Existing traditions of cricket literature, and I mean this as a very, for me, in my book, that's a very big compliment, and I suspect it will be in yours as well. When I ask you whether the book, especially in its early parts, can be considered as a spiritual successor to Sujit Mukherjee's wonderful work, The Autobiography of an Indian Cricket and of an Unknown Cricketer.
Yeah.
Right. Because just like Sujit Mukherjee's point was that there is more to cricket than international cricket. Everybody who is involved with cricket is part of that community.
Yes.
So is that a fair description?
Yes. And Sujit Mukherjee figures in this book. in several places.
Of course.
He's a close friend of mine. I was inspired by his work. As I relate in my book, I first met him when I was a college student, and I watched a Ranji Trophy match with him where G.R. Vishwanath got 100, and Sujit has described to me a Ranji Trophy match he played in against C.K. Naidu's Holkar. So he was a friend, he was a mentor, he was a, but there's some differences between Sujit's book and mine. One is, Sujit played a higher level of cricket than me. He played Ranji Trophy. I only played, for my college. Secondly, Sujit's book is about playing cricket. My book is partly about playing cricket, but as much about watching cricket and discussing cricket.
Of course.
Okay. So, but you could say broadly it's the same genre, but there are differences. I'm younger, I grew up in a part of India. And I think watching cricket, debating cricket is probably a greater part of my book than Sujit's book. So in that sense, I'd say they're slightly different in their orientation, because his is an autobiography. Now, you're a student of literature.
Yes.
His is an autobiography. Mine is a memoir. And in an autobiography, the person writing it is the principal protagonist. In a memoir, the person writing it is a witness rather than a participant, for the most part. So I would say his is an autobiography, mine is a memoir. But he himself, as we'll see, and as readers will see at several places in the book, he figures, my meetings with him, my conversations with him, and of course his own wonderful book.
Of course. And as you said, you were eavesdropping on greatness. I thought that was a very apt characterization.
Yeah.
So, if I may just add one thing, where among other places where I saw that that same spirit, not in terms of content, where I saw the same spirit was towards the end of his autobiography. Professor Mukherjee speaks of this experience of driving out to watch a local game. Right. So that spirit, so it's not about the similarity in content. I felt that somewhere there, that vibe, in that vibe, there is this shared approach towards the sport. That's partly what inspired my question. Obviously, we can't speak about this book without speaking about your maternal uncle Dore.
Yeah.
Right. For the uninitiated, and this is for the audience, Professor Guha's maternal uncle Dore lost the use of his right hand due to a childhood accident. He was right-handed, so that was a major blow. But he continued to play cricket very effectively at the club level as an effective bowler and as a fielder. He taught himself to use his left hand better. And afterwards, he continued to be involved as a very successful coach of the Friends Union Cricketing Club. So, though he had a parallel career, he was involved in cricket throughout his life, despite this particular difficulty that he had. And I was very struck by the fact, and that is a very important story to be narrated in the annals of Indian cricket, because these days we do not find somebody devoting that much time to the sport unless they have some hope of playing at least at the regional level. So I thought that was a very important, approach that we should discuss.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's certainly a very important figure in the book. Arguably the most important figure, apart from myself, because it's also my story as a fan. And as you say, he was my mama, and Dore Swami, known as Dore, my mother's brother. And your maternal uncle is particularly close to you in South India. And of course, he had no children of his own. So I was, in a sense, the object of his affection, his unfulfilled ambitions. So I had two hands and two arms. I showed some early promise as a spin bowler when I was young. So he thought my nephew will become the test cricketer. I never could. And I spectacularly failed him in that regard. But he's a figure who comes throughout the book. Even at the end, he reappears. He's now 84. He still runs his club, Friends Union Cricket Club. He's greatly admired by many cricketers in Karnataka. He is distrusted by cricket administrators in Karnataka because of his ethical principles, and he often questions them on their lack of ethical principles. And I was very keen. Very keen to finish this book while he was still alive. So I presented him the first copy, and he started reading it, and he began to grumble. He said, "There's too much about me. You should have written about other people." And I have written about other people too. But he is someone who is I mean, there's a secondary hero in this book. I mean, Dore, my uncle Dore is the main hero. The secondary hero is another left-arm spinner, albeit a much greater one, Bishan Singh Bedi. I mean, among the many heroes in this book, of course, I talk about Vishwanath and Chandrasekhar and Pataudi and Dravid and Kumble and Wasim Akram and so on. But Dore and Bishan Bedi, they have two things in common. One is they are left-arm spinners. Secondly, they're absolutely upright. When I quit the board and I wrote my letter of resignation, it was because of what Dore and Bishan had taught me. I was privileged to count Bishan Singh Bedi as a friend after having admired him as a cricketer. And it's really, and also, this kind of sense of nurturing young boys. I mean, I talk in the book about, an incident from 2017 when my friend Gauri Lankesh was murdered by a right-wing fundamentalist. And, I spoke out against it, and there was harassment of me, including threats of court cases and, attacks by right-wing fundamentalists. And I went to see my uncle. My uncle said, come and watch the club play. And here he was surrounded by young boys, nurturing them as he had done for the last 40 or 50 years. And as he said in that conversation where I say that in this match, he says, only 0.0001% of club cricketers will become test cricketers, but I show my boys to become better human beings, to develop a certain kind of character. So, my love for the game mostly comes to him, because my father also played a little bit of cricket. I may have picked it up anyway, but he's a thread who runs through this book, and I'm very, very happy that I was able to show it to him. He had no clue I was writing it. So, there are a couple of minor details in the first chapter which are wrong. I attributed the founding of a club called Sporting Youngsters to him. It was actually his elder brother. He told me, he said, you got that wrong. It was my brother Tangu who founded it. I took it over. But I didn't want him to know. So, from that point of view, I wanted to write it so that he could just see it, unbidden, as it were.
There are so many anecdotes in the book, so many wonderful anecdotes. I especially thought that anecdotes are not novel in cricket books. They are the main fodder of cricket books. But then the way each anecdote gel seamlessly, that's something that I really love. I really loved the book. I did not start off saying that I really loved the book. I should have said that in the very beginning. It was a real pleasure reading it. So that's what I should have started with. I'm sorry. But of the many stories, one which still resonates with me is the one where your uncle Dore made Ram Bahadur run around the field. Right, the legendary footballer Ram Bahadur, legendary footballer and a passionate cricketer. Ram Bahadur run around the field, and then in the end, he was weeping. So the whole character that goes into that emotion, that's something that really was interesting.
Yeah, so Ram Bahadur was an Olympian footballer and also Asian Game medalist who grew up with my uncle in Dehradun. He was from the working class. My uncle was upper middle class. It was an extraordinary friendship, which I speak about. And this story about Ram Bahadur coming back from the Rome Olympics to play a practice for my uncle's club and joking and not focusing on practice and hence being told by my uncle to take a round was told to me by Ram Bahadur many years later. So this must have been in the 1990s. So 40 years later, I went to my hometown Dehradun and I sought out my dear friend Ram Bahadur, and he started speaking about my uncle. And it's an extraordinary friendship. In fact, there's it's a very moving friendship of two across the class divide. A senior government officer and a Chaprasi's son are like brothers because of the friendship they forged on the sporting field. And this would be true, of course, in Kerala, among footballers in Kerala, among cricketers in England. Mike Brearley and Ian Botham would be an example of an aristocratic upper class Englishman and the bond he had with a kind of a great working class, all-rounder. So, but that story was not told to me by Dore, because Dore would not have. It was Ram Bahadur who many years later told me this story.
When I was reading that, when I was reading the anecdotes, this one, then Bishan Singh Bedi's response that anywhere for cricket, I will go anywhere for cricket. And so when I read all those things, I was reminded of Neville Carter's writing that cricket is a game that reveals character. And it reveals character not just when they are playing it, it's also all the relationships that are forged around it when you in the field when you're not playing. So that's a place where a lot of human interaction, powerful human interaction takes place. That's something that really struck me.
Right. Yeah.
While we are on this subject, it'd be good to speak about the FUCC right now, the Friends Union Cricket Club, the club that your uncle is still running, and the club and the only institution towards which you strongly affiliate yourself. And I loved your anecdote about the club tie, because the tie is usually a mark of social stature, right? Whether it's an Oxford or Cambridge college tie, it's always about the status. But then by wearing the FUCC tie to all sorts of elite gatherings, right, and proudly saying this is who I am, so that I thought was a very wonderful statement to make. Would you like to speak about that?
Yeah, I mean, behind me, if you just give me a minute, I'll get something from to show you about the club.
Please do, it'll be a pleasure.
Now, I didn't put this in my book. This is a plaque. You can see the plaque. I'll read out what it says.
Yes,
okay.
I can see it.
2010. Okay, this is a plaque. You can see the plaque. I'll read out what the plaque says. The plaque says, Dr. Ramachandra Guha, congratulations on being the first member, on being the first player from our club. Dr. Ramachandra Guha, congratulations on being the first player from our club to be honored with the Padma Bhushan Friends Union Cricket Club, Bangalore 2010. Now, this is lovely because it acknowledges I was a player. And it also holds out the possibility that an FUCC member will get the Padma Bhushan not for writing history books about India, but for playing cricket for India. So, the first player. I'm the first player to get an award. So I had put this in the book and I thought it'll seem like boasting, so I left it out. Right? No, so this is in my study. I just hold on a second.
Sure, sir.
It's in my study. There's Gandhi, there's Ambedkar out there. You can see Gandhi, Ambedkar, and a present my club gave me. So that's what that. And that it's so beautifully worded. The first player, and I played for the second division. I didn't even play for the first division. But one day there will be a FUCC player who, like Rahul Dravid, will get a Padma Bhushan for cricket, not for something else. So that's why how much the club means to me.
But even then, he'll be the second person, because the first person.
Yes, I'm the first player.
Yeah. Absolutely. This next question, it displays my professional leanings as a student of literature. When I first heard about this book and did the first natural thing and checked it out online, read the description on Amazon, before it got released, I was very struck by something in the description, because it says the work is cast as a work of literature. Combining anecdotes, fan memoir, etc., etc., etc. It goes on like that. So I don't know whether you had a direct hand in the description, or whether it is something that you heartily endorse. But I personally was very gratified by that description, because there is a tradition of cricket literature, and more importantly, an Indian cricket literature. Right? We will be doing great disjustice to the likes of Sujit Mukherjee, Rajan Bala, and even Mike Marquis, because even though he's not an Indian, his cricket books, some of his cricket books, especially Warman of the Shooting, is an absolute classic. So I thought there was a very important statement to say that works of nuance and permanence can be written on this game. I
think that was written by my editor, Dr. Udayan Mitra, who has a PhD in English literature himself. So he may have written it. But I'm glad he did, because for me, I wanted to make a distinction between this book and my last cricket book, A Corner of a Foreign Field, because that is a work of scholarship. This is not a work of scholarship, which means it does not have footnotes, is based on memory rather than research. It's more opinionated, probably less reliable. It wears its prejudices and its passions on its sleeve. So it's a work of you can call it a work of, it's not a work of scholarship. Whether it's a work of literature, it's not for me to, for others to decide whether it qualifies for that elevated label. But I was happy to with what my editor wrote on the jacket flap, because it is not a work of scholarship. All right, there are already some, misremembered memories.
Okay.
There's an account here of jaunty roads which I misdated by 4 years. It happened 4 years
Okay,
later.
yes, yes.
But I'm not going to change it because I remember it at a certain time in my life. Obviously, there's some obvious wrong facts which I'll correct. There is a fact about Raching Dungapur which is wrong. But the point is, it's a work of emotion, unfulfilled ambition, pleasure, dismay, depression. It's not character. It's not a work of scholarship. Whether it's a work of literature, it's for others to say, but it's certainly not like a column of foreign field based on many years of research, footnote, every assertion footnoted, every claim put in context, none of that.
Okay.
So when I say, for example, that you mentioned the FUCC.
Yes.
Now, when I say, for example, that we FUCC players always believed that our best cricketers were discriminated against when it came to choosing the Karnataka Ranji Trophy team in favor of cricketers from BUCC or Swastik. Now, that is not a assertion that can be authoritatively proven. It may be also totally wrong. Maybe in my mind, there is prejudice against FUCC players. It may be wrong. So, but that's in a work of, since it expresses my sentiments, my feelings so explicitly, it's clearly not a work of scholarship.
See, I would say it definitely qualifies as a work of literature. It's the nuance, the craft, especially something that I mentioned earlier, the way each anecdote brings something forth without it seeming like it was so. Okay, I have got 40 anecdotes. See, that's the way some cricket books work, not yours. I'm not speaking about that. But then there are certain people who think that if I have so many anecdotes, so many stories, might have been told by other people as well, I'll put it together, it makes a book. But then here there is a larger narrative, there's a larger ocean of emotion, mainly that of fandom, mainly that of your personal relationship with the game. That I think definitely makes it a work of literature. So so this was a question that would have come a bit down the lane, but since we ended up speaking about a corner of a foreign field here, I think I should just bring it in here. And before that, I should say that, and I hope you will agree with me that fans can sometimes be a bit greedy. However much their idols give them, they will still ask for more. And I also happen to be a fan of Ramachandra Guha, the cricket writer. So you wrote about several things. It was a wonderful book. So one thing which one part of my appetite which was not better was the experience of writing a corner of a foreign field. That the experience of the cricket fan writing a corner of a foreign field. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So I didn't. It would have been out of place in this book.
Of course.
It would have been an act of vanity to say I wrote this book and then I said this and the reviewer said this. It would be an act of vanity. So I just mentioned each of my books in passing, each of my previous books.
Yes, of course.
And it would have destroyed the integrity of this book if I talked about corner of a foreign field.
I totally agree there. I was just
But let me tell you, since you mentioned Sujit Mukherjee, originally Sujit Mukherjee and I were going to jointly write a history of the Bombay Pentangular, a cricketing history, not a social history, just about players and scores. He had written, I had written about the Ranji Trophy in wickets in the East. He had written about Indian Test cricket in playing for India. So we were going to write an account of, and the idea was we would look at the microfilms in the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library, and he would do half, I would do half. And he started looking at the microfilms. He was already in his late 60s. He had very thick glasses, if you remember. He said, Ram, you do this project on your own. I can't do it. I'm old. And so I said, fine. And while reading those microfilms, I came across this amazing report of the selection of the Hindu captain for the quadrangular of 1913. I mean, for your younger viewers, I'd like to explain that before the Ranji Trophy started in 1935, the Bombay Quadrangular, which became a Pentangular, was the major cricket tournament in India. It was played between the Europeans, the Parsis, the Hindus, and the Muslims. And since Indian Christians and Jews did not fit in this framework, a fifth team was added called the rest, and it became the Pentagonal in 1935. So I was reading a report about the choosing of the Hindu team in the 1913 tournament. And it was like, it was huge. There was ball by ball commentary. Reports were carried in newspapers all across the world. It was like the IPL today. Will Kohli leave Royal Challengers Bangalore for another club? So this is the kind of excitement around the tournament. So a captain had been chosen for the Hindu team. His name was MD Pai. And a week before the tournament, MD Pai, the newly chosen captain of the Hindu team, was felicitated by his caste association, the Gaud Saraswats of Bombay. And I was reading a newspaper report of this felicitation. And in that report, Pai had said, I am grateful to my fellow Gaud Saraswats for honoring me. Since a captain of the Hindu team is the greatest honor a Hindu sportsman in India can achieve. But this honor should have gone to my friend Mr. Balu, who is a more experienced and better cricketer. So I was, as the colloquial phrase goes, gobsmacked. If tomorrow, Rohit Sharma is made captain of the Indian one-day team, it's unlikely that Kohli will say he's a better captain than me. Dhoni would never say so-and-so is a better. No cricketer would acknowledge this kind of superiority publicly unless they're feeling ashamed about something beyond cricket. And in this case, I was feeling ashamed because he was a Brahmin and Balu was a Dalit. Balu was by far the greater cricketer, but as a Dalit, he could never be appointed captain of the Hindu team because that would upturn the caste hierarchy, where Dalits are supposed to labor and Brahmins are supposed to think. So this news report in the Bombay Chronicle of 1913 got me thinking that there's more to this tournament than cricket. And I moved from writing a cricketing history of the Pentagonal to writing a social history of Indian cricket around the axis of religion, race, caste, and nation, in which Balu and his brother Vittal become the major characters, in that story. So it involved a great deal of newspaper research and other things, but it was the writing of that book, as I say somewhere in that book. Before the writing of the book, I was a cricket writer in the weekends and a social and political historian on the weekdays. And my profession and my passion did not mix. They really came together through the story of Palwankar Balu, which could not be told through a cricketing lens alone. Although he was a great left-arm spinner, he was the Vinu Mankad or Bishan Singh Bedi or Ravindra Jadeja of his day. But there was a much larger backstory to his cricket, which involved the politics of caste, the struggle against untouchability, the respective roles of Gandhi and Ambedkar, and so on and so forth. So in that book, my profession and my passion blended. To what effect, I can't say. After that, I returned to writing works of history in which cricket did not figure, and biographies of Gandhi. And this book, again, is a fan's book. So I have to, in a sense, and it is, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Rakesh, but this is my last book on cricket. There will be no book on cricket after this. And there will be books on other subjects. I'll still watch, and I love the game. But a column of Foreign Field, for the first and last time, brought together my profession and my passion, because I was so intrigued by the character of Palwankar Balu.
Wonderful. Sir, regarding this being your last book, I hope not, and going by your own comments about the origins of your cricket books, I have the sense that cricket has a way of, making you write at the, when you least expect it, right? The way you started writing, wickets in the East and spin and other turns because of, personal and political situations, right? So
right.
I hope, and I don't want a catastrophe to happen just for the sake of that. I'm not that cricket mad, but then, I hope something spurs you on to write something a few years down the line. Yes. So going back, one important trait of your fandom, as revealed in the book, is a deep sense of history,
yeah,
and a role of cricketing memory. So is everything okay? Can you hear me?
It's okay. Good. Yeah.
Okay. So all those memories, all those inherited memories from your uncle, from directly or indirectly from VM Mudaya, right, from your father. So, do you have a sense of, to what extent? I have the sense that that kind of fandom is disappearing in post 2000 era. Do you have a sense of that? Would you like to comment on that?
You see, it's disappearing only because of the availability of technology.
Yes.
When I started following cricket, how old, if you don't mind me asking you, how old are you, Rakesh?
I'm 33.
33. So you were born in 1987,
Yes.
right? By the time you were born, let alone by the time you came into boyhood, every match played by India was telecast live on television, whether it was in New Zealand or South Africa or wherever, right?
Yes, yes.
You grew up in which part of Kerala are you from?
Trivandrum. I grew up in Trivandrum.
So you grew up in Trivandrum, and if India was playing the West Indies in Ahmedabad, you would see it. If India was playing Pakistan in Lahore, you would see it. If India was playing Australia in Adelaide, you would see it live, and so on and so forth. Right. So every match, if you were cricket mad, as I suspect you were, you could see every match as it was being enacted, ball by ball, stroke by stroke, wicket by wicket.
Yes.
My cricket universe was very different. The first live telecast I saw was in 1978 when India toured Pakistan, and I was 20 years old.
Okay.
All right. There was no television in Indian cities. There was no television in Dehradun at all. In Delhi, there was television, and only a test match played in Delhi would be telecast live, and an awful grainy screen on which you could see nothing at all. Right. Now, so my memories of cricket, the first cricket I encountered, cricket stories I encountered, were through three medium: oral, ORAL, told to me by my uncle and father and friends; in print, reading the newspaper or sport and pastime or wisdom field almanac; and oral, AURAL, through the newspaper, through the radio. All right. So not visual through the television. So oral, and print. And these were wonderful ways of soaking in the folklore of the game, because oral and oral sound similar, and the radio commentator knows this. So when Alan McGilvray is speaking about, Alan McGilvray was a great Australian cricket commentator of the 60s, 50s, and 60s. When he's speaking about a Patowdy batting, he knows there are Indians listening to him. He had never heard of Dehradun, but he knows there are Indians listening to him in Bombay and Delhi. And he knows some of them want to know how Patowdy's batsmanship compared with Vijay Hazare, who 20 years before Patowdy scored 100 in each innings against Lindwall and Miller. So the radio commentators are telling stories. I mean, John Arlott is telling stories on the BBC. So, since I cultivated my love and interest in cricket through a very different medium than watching it on television, all this, it makes a much greater impact. Television is fleeting, he plays and he goes away, right? Whereas here, the kind of, the way in which you hear things, there's an account in my book of my coming to Bangalore to spend summer holidays as a schoolboy and going to club practice with my uncle. FUCC used to then practice, first used to practice in the Malleshwaram High School ground, later on near the Kantirava Stadium. After practice, going to Koshi's, and after Koshi's, coming home, having a bath, and before we go to sleep, my uncle telling me more stories. And, and these are often things he had not heard. Again, there's an account in the book of my uncle telling me how Meenu Mankat got 12 wickets in the Madras Test of 1952. This was played, the Madras Test was played 2,000 miles away from Dehradun, where my uncle was. My uncle was 15 at the time. He may have been listening on the radio, or somebody may have told him how Mankat got gravely out. But then he told me 20 years later, he told me, this is what Mankat was like. He drew gravely out of the crease, then he bowled a straighter one, then he got a LBW. That always stick in your mind. You watch it on television, it's very different. Right? The whole way of receiving things and remembering things is so very different. It's fleeting and evanescent on television. But these oral memories, which my uncle and others passed on to me, are imperishable. They're with you forever.
So, yeah, see, even my generation was lucky to a limited extent in that, I heard of G.R. Vishwanath's offside play from my father, who has never seen him play live or not much on television either. It's all through the radio commentary. So I just want to ask you this and the whole see the kind of aesthetic sense of how the trajectories of the ball and the way the shots are played, that almost visceral sensation of the play, that is there in the many fans of your generation. That's not there in contemporary fans who have, as you said, access to crystal clear relay. And that has also got something to do with the fact that, you know, the whole broadcast does not put cricket at the center anymore, right? There is so little space for cricket. It's all about the advertisements. Things are just packaged. So would you agree with that?
No, I think, also, Rakesh, for me, the aesthetics matter a great deal,
Of course.
How the left foot goes out for a cover drive. That's it. Because I play cricket myself at a decent level, I can appreciate technique, innovation, in a certain way. So I can't, since I'm not young, I can't put myself in the shoes of a 25-year-old and how they receive the game. But in answer to your question, I think I was fortunate in that I came to television late.
Okay.
It was playing, reading, talking before it was watching on a small screen, and I think probably my book reflects that very different way in which I was reared as a lover of cricket.
Of course it is. So you speak quite a bit about college cricket, about how how there was a vibrant cricketing culture in college cricketing culture in Delhi back then, about how the Hindu St. Stephen's finals, regular finals, were very eagerly attended by the public, with the commentary being broadcast on all India radio and all that. So when I read that, and when I thought about I was thinking, our cricket has become Americanized so much in terms of its commodification, the shorter duration, cheerleaders, everything. But then we have failed to imbibe one aspect of American sporting culture, which is that of of college sport, which acts as a fulcrum for local communities, with people turning out on the weekends to support their local champions. So that is one thing that we missed out on. Would you like to comment on that?
No, that's a very perceptive observation. You're right. I mean, particularly basketball and football, American football, much less so baseball, but basketball and American football, the college teams are feeders for the major league teams, very much so. And usually you make your name in a college team, then you're picked for the NBA. Though there's some people who may come straight from school and so on. And not so in cricket. Now, I'm not an expert on the physiology of different sports. But my sense, Rakesh, is that basketball and American football, a 16-year-old can't play it at top level. Tendulkar could play for India at 16. Yes. Right. Yes. You need to be filled out. You need to be, have muscles and a certain kind of development and a certain physical strength and endurance to play at the very top. So those 2 or 3 years at college are crucial preparation for entering the professional game. Again, as I said, I'm giving you a spontaneous, off-the-cuff answer. I've not studied it. I don't know much about sports medicine. I know nothing about biology and physiology. But my sense is, if there is a Kuldeep Yadav type Chinaman bowler, and he's spotted at the age of 16, and he has a very good, this guy is googly. Kuldeep Yadav is the most unathletic looking cricketer. Chota hai, mota hai, and he bowls so well, right? And he's identified at the age of 16, and the coach says, "Isko main test cricket khilaunga, college mat padho. Don't go to college. Just come and join my camp, and I'll get to the likewise with Tendulkar, who did not even finish high school, right?" And I think it may have something to do. Of course, it has something to do also with the enormous rewards that a professional cricketer has. So, if at 17 or 18 you're talented, you don't want to, really waste 4 years getting a degree. But it's a very interesting question you posed, and I think it's something that would repay deeper sociological analysis.
So
one last thing.
Yeah, sure, please.
You see, before Indian cricket got Americanized, you're absolutely right. The IPL is a great example of the Americanization of Indian cricket. before Indian cricket was Americanized, college cricket was much more important.
Yes. Yes.
So the Indian Test cricketers of a previous generation all first earned their spurs in inter-university cricket. Bishan Singh Bedi, Ajit Wanikar, Sunil Gavaskar, Arapali Prasanna. All of them came up through inter-college cricket. Now, of course, that's not possible because it's become professionalized, and at 16 or 17, a boy has to make a choice.
Of course, absolutely. So coming to your views on the IPL, it is they are very public. You don't really approve of it. But then that was not news. That was not news while reading the book. But what was news was that you had endorsed Mugul Keshavan's suggestion that some kind of a franchisee intercity cricket can be played, and you had endorsed it before T20 had become a major deal. Right. So my question to you is, and this is something, my suspicion is that what has gone wrong with the IPL is not the franchisee model, but a failure of the imagination in terms of technique. Why does, so why can't, it's blasphemy to say this, but why can't franchisee cricket involve longer formats, one-day matches, God forbid a three-day match? God forbid, women's cricket, right? So why, rather than, going for shorter and shorter formats such as T10 and the ridiculous notion of 100, why can't there be a better imagination in that sense, right?
I completely agree with you. I mean, of course, absolutely. I mean, 50-50 cricket, a three-day match where, because your skills are really tested in the longer form of the game, a three-day match which is, shall we say, 80-40. First innings 80, second innings 40, which is 240 overs spread over 3 days, right? So that there are no draws, right? Absolutely. And the first innings, and no restriction on bowlers. So if a bowler wants to bowl from one end, it's a seaming track, Bumrah bowls all through, fine. That's a very interesting exercise, and it'll make it much more interesting. The cricket much more interesting. The players will enjoy it more. But, it's really the evening television audience. When the IPL first started, there's a friend of mine called Trichu Ramakrishna, T.R. Ramakrishna, former sports writer, as his name indicates, Tamil speaking, but from your state of Kerala, who told me, he said, the greatest victims of the IPL, he named them, I won't name them, will be the 8 o'clock news anchors. Okay, now that is a very perceptive remark, right? Okay, so then what happened for the first year or two, that was true. Then even my friend TR didn't realize how popular IPL would become. By the third year, no film starring Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, Hrithik Roshan, Salman Khan was released in IPL season because they really could not compete. So it became Tamasha, which even film stars recognized was beyond them to rival. And in a sense, the most greatest tribute to the popularity of the IPL was that in this pandemic, every so often, our Pradhan Mantri would come and make a speech to tell us what to do, to bang bartans, to light diyas, and he would do it at 9 p.m. But he wanted to make one speech at IPL, and he did it at 6 p.m. before the IPL, because even Prime Minister Modi thought he cannot compete with the IPL. So not just Arnab Goswami, not just Shah Rukh Khan, even Prime Minister Modi cannot compete with the IPL, because it's those 2 hours. And Tamasha, Dhoom Dham, you had a hard day at work, you came back, come back home, have a beer, chat to your family, order in some pizza and enjoy yourself and go to sleep, right? So that's all it is. It's all sport, it's entertainment. So although your suggestion that the franchisee should play a 3-day matches too is extremely appealing from the technical point of view, from making the contests more meaningful and challenging to the players involved, it won't suit the broadcasters and the sponsors.
Yes. Of course, it's that the whole idea that 3 or 4 overs can be very interesting without a single run being scored or a single wicket falling, that has completely gone out the window, right? That sort of, an appreciation of the sport itself is something that's on the way, right? So now I come to this part where I want to read out a small portion of your book, right? Because and I don't know whether you'll agree with me, because see there is see I'm only speaking about these resonances. I spoke about Sujit Mukherjee earlier, and in several senses I also felt the book is very Jamesian. It's very much in the tradition of Sailor James, who says that when we go into this, so the whole background, our whole history, it goes with us into the field. So for the readers enlightenment, there's this part where Professor Guha speaks about what still remains his favorite brand of cricket, that is Karnataka cricket, where he speaks about Karnataka cricketers, right? And he speaks about how the elder generation of Kannada cricketers, Vishwanath and Chandrasekhar, are described differently using different words from the likes of Rahul Dravid and Kumble. So he says, Vishwanath and Chandra, they might be described as charming or decent and even laid back. But at the same time, Dravid and Kumble would be described as courageous and committed, something that is far more entrepreneurial. So what I wanted to read out is the part that follows. These shades of difference reflected the changing sociology of the city. The Bangalore that Vishy and Chandra played for was that of the Mavalli tiffin rooms and the unencroached upon Kabban Park, a town of tiled bungalows and green barbets calling. MG Road then had more cinema houses than it had cars. The Bangalore that Dravid and Kumble played in was that of Epsilon and Infosys, of glass and concrete, and no birds at all, of buses and motorbikes and SUVs all piled up in horrendous traffic jams. Skipping a couple of paragraphs, I come to this line, which is the line which really had me cracking and which I really loved in its very first reading. For its part, the Indian Cricket Board, once run by egotistic and self-important amateurs, was now controlled by professional racketeers. I simply loved that description. So am I way off the mark when I say that there is a lot of Sailor James in here, this whole important awareness that not consciously, I'm not saying consciously,
No,
but
no, I think that's reading too much, because James, there's only one beyond a boundary.
of course.
Okay. Now, when I wrote a column of Foreign Field,
Of course.
that may be the only year in my life when I did not read Beyond the Boundary, because I did not want to be. I tried, this can be only Beyond the Boundary because James was a participant in the reshaping of West Indies cricket twice,
Of course.
through collaborating with Constantine, who was the first great black cricketer in England, and the second time by leading a campaign to have Warren made captain of the West Indies team. The first, so James was a writer and a participant. I was merely a writer. I think what those passages you read reflect is like James. And since you mentioned Sujit Mukherjee, unlike Sujit Mukherjee, but like James, my training was in history and sociology. Sujit Mukherjee's references would have been, analysis would have been much more literary. He had a PhD in literature like you, and he was a literature teacher and a publisher. James, of course, was a self-trained historian, and I was, but he wrote a great book on the Haitian Revolution, and and if the kind of social history that is present fleetingly in my book, which you read out, it's part of my training. I did a PhD in sociology. The first great intellectual influence on me was the historian E.P. Thompson, who incidentally was also a friend of James, but that is by the way, and who was who looked at history through the prism of conflict and tension and change. So clearly, my scholarly training is present here and there. I mean, it's not there everywhere, but where I won't say a debt to James, but where James and I share something is that sociology and social history are part of our intellectual framework, and obviously that would enter in somewhere that way. And of course, also finally, I mean, I have known Bangalore for 50 years, so I've seen these transformations at first hand. So when I'm writing about my city, Like James was writing about his island. So he knew how Trinidad changed. He knew how racial relations in Trinidad evolved in his lifetime. I've seen my city change socially, economically, culturally, aesthetically, and clearly the cricket cannot be immune from these changes. I didn't want to make it central to my book because my book is not a sociological work, it's a literary work or pretends to be a literary work, but inescapably aspects of my sociological and historical training would be present.
Part of the reason why I would strongly argue this is a work of literature is because of the kind of wit and the kind of humor that is present. I really loved it. I really loved that passage.
By the way,
yes,
there's very little wit in Sierra James.
Sorry?
There's very little wit or humor in Sierra James.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Of course,
now
of
that,
course.
which is to maybe he was writing a much more important book about a much more important topic, anti-colonialism, anti-racism. So he could joke about it, right? So right. So in a sense, it's a. To buttress my point, this is a much lighter book. It's like a much lighter book then. And there's also very little wit. There's very little wit in Corner of a Foreign Field. Also, I mean, there may be the odd joke. I think there's one or two jokes about C.K. Naidu and film. That's about it. So this is
a little bit more than Sheila James still, even in a Corner of a Foreign Field.
Maybe I don't know.
No, my only point is that I was not at any level suggesting that this is a scholarly work. My only point is that kind of a thinking about cricket, that is something that as you said, even when you are not systematically doing that, and many people end up thinking about its social aspects, and that is something that many people do not seem to perceive. They only seem to see the tamasha. That is where I was coming from. Because if I may say that, see, my experience as somebody who was trying to do something with this over the past few years has been, everyone assumes that I wrote a thesis just because I love cricket. I love cricket, but that's beside the point. Right. So partly that kind of, maybe that baggage came through in that question. So coming to your suggestion that Javagal Srinath should be, you had initially suggested that Srinath should be incorporated as an additional member or as an invitee, and later that maybe he could be a replacement. And this is just a comment. I found that to be, I found that to be very prescient because I'm sure, and because I had no way of knowing this otherwise. But it so happened that a few years back I read a short foreword that Srinath had written for a cricket book. Right, that book was about tales of success and despair. Some people who made it and some people who did not. And Javagal Srinath, and I don't think anybody would, writing is what he's really good at. But then that forward said, in that forward he said, playing cricket should not be about representing your country, or your state, or getting an IPL contract. Playing cricket should be about a sporting culture, about a habit of playing the sport. He said that is the primary thing. And secondly, and what I found even more interesting was that he said that should be the primary focus of the various state associations, because part of their job is to develop cricket in the region and not just to select teams for higher levels. So I found that was what came to my mind when I read that particular suggestion. So I was really struck by that. Just want to say that.
Thank you. Just one footnote.
Yes.
I said I mentioned Srinath's name, but I said someone like Srinath. And in the meetings, I said there could be others. It struck me last week. Last week, I had a conversation about my book at the Kolkata Literary Festival with Arun Lal, who was a former Test cricketer. And I could have mentioned him. Maybe I did not mention him because he was my friend and college captain, right? And I had known him for 40 years, whereas Srinath is just an acquaintance. But if the committee or administrators had a capable, intelligent, upright, international cricketer, male cricketer as one of its members, I think it could have pushed back against the corrupt board officials much more effectively. So I stand by that suggestion.
Absolutely. So, staying on with the theme of, so now we have, this has automatically segued into my next question, which has to do with your wonderful coinage of the superstar culture. And you were behind the scenes at that point while some of those major episodes were playing out. So I just want to ask you whether you have any sense of, see, you explain very well why that happened and why that happened inevitably even within the system. That structure we understand, but why is there so little resistance from the public? Do you have any take on that?
I mean, one has to reflect on it. Maybe go back, one would have to invoke B.R. Ambedkar's speech in the Constituent Assembly where he talked about bhakti as being endemic, hero worship as being endemic to Indian culture, and I would say particularly to Hindu culture. And it's there in other spheres. We excessively venerate our entrepreneurs, our politicians, our film stars, and we make them larger than life figures. So obviously there's a deeper cultural aspect to that. We don't debunk them. I mean, it's ridiculous that Kunal Kamra is being hauled up by the Supreme Court for satire. Even our judges can't take jokes at their expense. Right. So there's kind of pomposity, and most Indians are willing to go along. The boss is treated like a boss.
Yes.
There is no skepticism of what that person does. There is no accountability. I mean, PM cares is an absolute scandal. The thousands of crores that the PM in his name gets, and there's no accountability of public money. Right. And it would happen elsewhere. I mean, Saurav Ganguly is president of the board and is advertising a cricket fantasy game. It is absolutely scandalous. No other country would allow it. Maybe even Pakistan would allow it. Sorry to say this, but maybe even Pakistan would allow it. So, if you're a big shot, if you're successful, you can get away with everything. I'll give you a small incident. I was once traveling with a very well-known and very wealthy resident of Bangalore.
Okay.
And I was going with him out of the city. We stopped at Mysore for lunch. We stopped at a nice hotel in Mysore for lunch, and we had to go for a meeting 3 hours beyond Mysore. The manager recognized my friend and said, "Sir, you won't pay. I'll give." So my friend said, "Look, I'm the first guy who can afford it." Right. A free meal should be given to a working class chap who comes. No, sir, we can't let you pay now. So the more famous and more wealthy, the more deference you get and the less accountability. That might be part of our culture. But it's awful. I mean, as I said, we have to follow best practices. If we want to run the cricket board professionally, we should do what the best run sporting associations everywhere else do. Yes. And clearly we failed over and over again. And I was obviously up against the wall, and it was not going anywhere.
Yes. See, just responding to that, taking a leaf from your own book, unless you are somebody like Bishan Singh Bedi, you take full use of that, right? Unless it's somebody like Bishan Singh Bedi who does not want to, right. the whole aspect where he sent that sign back. I thought that was very revealing. That was very revealing. Yes. See, my next question, pardon me if it's slightly cheeky, but then, one of the most striking things that you have written, and it's very true, is that players should come first and fans second. That is absolutely true. But I felt that your own writing suggests that these days we may need to tweak that a little bit more. Cricket and some of its ethos come first, players next, and fans the third, right? So in some sense, the players seem to forget that these days with the superstar culture. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly. I mean, I think certainly they have an extremely elevated sense of self, but it's probably our fault, Rakesh. It's because we give them uncritical adulation and veneration. It's true of. It's probably our fault. We should scrutinize them more. We should have a more democratic, open, not a debunking culture, not criticize merely, but people should be accountable and transparent. And so it's our fault for not demanding it.
Okay, of course. So that we should raise questions, and today, so our conversation has had this very fortunate, trend wherein the segues to the next questions are coming very automatically. So this is something that I want to ask you. See, what I love the most about your account of the COA or your experience with the COA are not actually the revelations, but the part where in exiting the establishment, when you write about the stances you have to take against Dravid and Gavaskar, whom you greatly admire, and your subsequent experiences, your discomfort as a fan the kind of difficult position you were in, the kind of a little bit of turmoil that was there, that comes through very clearly. And I thought there comes, see, if there is another major takeaway from this book, other than the need to shed chauvinism, it's right here that even when you may not love doing it, you may not enjoy doing it, and as you said, you don't need to debunk. But when you are in a particular position, when you have noticed something, as a fan, you do have the, in some sense, the honors of raising a question, of being a citizen, in a sense, right? So would you agree with that?
Rakesh, of course. But what I was surprised was, you see, I have a life outside cricket.
Of course.
I have a sense of self-respect outside cricket. Even if I'm disappointed in cricketers, I can write my history books and so on, right? And what really disappointed me was that my colleagues, Vinod Rai, who incidentally served in your state, he was an IAS officer from Kerala, a very distinguished IAS officer who had been Secretary to Government, CA, Accountant General, that he would feel intimidated by cricketers. He had the same independent status that I had.
Of course.
Vikram Livaye, a very respected financier, right? Interestingly, only Diana Energy was with me on this somewhat. She was willing to fight with me, right? So we had been appointed by the Supreme Court. Mr. Rai, Mr. Limai, and I were on that committee because the Supreme Court believed these are people of standing who won't take shit from entrenched interests, who will challenge entrenched interests because they have a standing of their own.
Yes.
And in some ways, for a distinguished civil servant like Vinod Rai, who had nothing to lose, it's different from a sports writer. For example, an Indian sports writer for Times of India wants to write about the Indian cricket team. If he goes to the press box and challenges Kohli, Kohli will have him banned from the press box. Likewise with the commentator, right? So you can understand their diffidence. But for someone like Vinod Rai, not to blatantly call out illegalities of this kind, because he's nervous and scared of Kohli or Tendulkar, it's just, or Dhoni, was to be mystified, because
very disappointing.
Your sense of self-respect should be, you've done so many things elsewhere. You don't need Dhoni's approval to think you're a human being. I don't, So that's what really dismayed me, that my colleagues were so scared of top cricketers.
Yes, of course. On that note, so let's now turn to the central theme of the books, because we are, reaching the end of, nearing the end of our discussion before we take audience's questions. I just have a couple of more things. Would you like to speak about the central theme of the book, as I have suggested, is that of cosmopolitan fandom. And what I loved about the way that was written is that throughout the book, as elsewhere, even in the past, you always happily describe yourselves as a cricketing chauvinist, as a Karnataka chauvinist, right? So, but what you finally say in this book is that it's possible to be a supporter without bearing any sort of rancor towards the opposing team, right? So it is all about cosmopolitan fandom. So would you like to speak about that?
Yeah, it is. But it's, you see, when the word cosmopolitan is used, is generally used about other nations.
Yes.
It's used in the way Tagore would use it in his great tract on nationalism, which every Indian should read.
Yes.
That you're an Indian, but you can admire and learn from what English people or French people or Chinese people or Pakistanis do, right? Yes. And my form of fandom incorporates that, but also the levels below the nation.
Yes.
That the state, the club, the school, the locality.
Yes.
So, my first heroes were Dehradun's cricketers.
Yes.
Not even UP or Ranji Trophy cricketer. Ram Bahadur was my first hero, right? Now, so hence at all levels. So, yes, cosmopolitan fandom, inclusive fandom, non-sectarian fandom, you can use any of these phrases and I'd be quite happy.
Yes. So, this will be my final question. And I suspect that, I don't know whether this will be reading too much. See, at various points, you have said that cricket writing is a form of therapy for you, right? So it's a form of, in some sense, an escape from some of the harsh realities of life. So, and you have said that very explicitly regarding both wickets in the East and spin and other turns. And Commonwealth of Cricket is not that sort of a book specifically, right? So what I felt, I don't know whether you would agree with me here, I felt that more than the other books, the fact that you are speaking about this kind of a fandom at this moment in time in our country's history. I don't know whether you, I'm not saying you consciously thought about it, but we are at a point where all our affiliations are becoming very set in stone, where nationalism is becoming very divisive. So to speak about such a fandom, such an open fandom, at this point, I thought that was a commentary on the present, whether you intended it that way or not.
Yeah. So to your observation that, as I myself said about my earlier books, that cricket writing is therapy. This book is not therapy, but it was release. I wrote this after I started writing this. I started thinking about this after the second volume of my Gandhi biography was published. And that book is 1,000 pages long. It has 2,000 footnotes and an index that runs to 80 pages. So it was released. I wanted to do a different kind of writing, where there involved no research, no consultation, no documentation, no footnotes. So it was released. And one of the things about the book, Rakesh, you may or may not have noticed it. First, it has 11 chapters.
Oh, I did not notice that actually.
You should have noticed. As a cricket lover, you should have noticed it. Okay. It has 11 chapters. Precisely 11 chapters, not one less or one more. Right. The other thing about the book, and since you're a professor of literature and you read a lot of non-fiction books,
yes,
it has no preface, no acknowledgements, no index.
I did notice that. I did notice that.
So there are only two people who read this book before it was published. But of course, my editors, but two friends. One was my son, who's thanked in the dedication. And the other is the British cricket writer David Kynaston, yes, who I thank in a footnote, who I say in a footnote, said this. You saw that, right? I didn't want to say this book was written, I'm grateful to A, I'm grateful to B, I got a grant from this guy. No. I just wanted no preface. I mean, it's the first book of mine, the last book of mine, which has no preface, of course, no index, no acknowledgement. So, in a sense, it's release. It's a release from writing serious scholarly tomes, which have all the apparatus to convince your peers that this guy is a proper researcher. So it's not therapy, but it was written as release. Absolutely. Your other question, just remind me of the other question.
I was just saying, isn't it pertinent that you are speaking about this sort of fandom at a time when we are
yes, of course. Yeah, but it came naturally, Rakesh. I mean, that's why I wanted to have a chapter on Pakistani cricketers, and I just called it Some Favorite Pakistanis. Originally, I wanted to give a slightly stronger title. The original chapter title was My Friend, the Enemy. But then I thought that's too cliche. I just called it Some Favorite Pakistanis and let people read, right? Yes, I mean, in a sense, it's a kind of statement. But it's true that for my generation, again, I mean, you are 33.
Yes.
So you, for the last 15 years, I think, there's been no India-Pakistan test match.
Yes.
So for the bulk of your, you've from 1978 till 2005, 27 years, I saw Indians and Pakistanis play all the time. Not just in test cricket, but in Sharjah, in Toronto, and in one-day matches all over the place. So it was very much Pakistan was, in a sense, the most important team apart from India in terms of watching and appreciating. And I saw many matches live. I saw the 96 World Cup live, the 99 World Cup live. I saw test matches against Pakistan several in Bangalore, one in Madras. So in that sense, they were a very important part of my cricketing consciousness, Pakistani cricketers. So it was inevitable that I would have a chapter on them. I mean, West Indies and Pakistan were the most important teams for me to watch live. And the West Indies part I wrote about in the chapter on St. Stephen's and watching Viv Richards back. So I didn't need a separate chapter on West Indies. I could club them with other foreign cricketers. Yes, I mean, in a sense, it is a statement. Yes, I'd accept that. Yeah.
So it was a real pleasure. Now we are moving on to see. We had asked the viewers to send in their questions in advance. Many did. So of that, we have only shortlisted 3 because we have live questions as well. So I will just raise those questions that we have shortlisted. The first one comes from Gokul Krishnan. He says, although Ranji Trophy remains the biggest filter to international cricket, is the IPL beginning to infringe upon this in a certain sense? Do you think the public visibility that IPL gives players, which is unfortunately larger than what Ranji Trophy can give, is putting a sort of pressure on selectors to pick players who are performing well in the IPL?
Yeah, but I think absolutely. I think we cannot neglect the Ranji Trophy so much as we have done. In my term in the COA, I found lamentably that Ranji Trophy players' dues had not been paid. In the pandemic, I don't believe they've been paid. Right. We should schedule matches so that the best international players always are available, at least for the knockout matches of the Ranji Trophy, quarter-final, semi-final, final. And because the longer follow the game is the best test for emerging players. You can find a Natarajan from IPL and fly him in for a T20 match, but he's not going to get anyone out. He's not going to get Steve Smith out in a test match. I mean, no disrespect to Natarajan, but he'll bowl for 2 days in a test match and he won't get Steve Smith out. For that, you need a kind of different kind of player. So yes, I mean, it's unfortunate that we are neglecting the Ranji Trophy like this. There's no question.
Yes, of course. Next question is from David Wesley. He speaks about the long tradition of cricket writing from Nairan to the recent times featuring Mike Marquisee and yourself and all that. And he asks, how has cricket writing, do you have a take on how cricket writing has changed in the era of Crickbuzz and ESPN Cricinfo? Do you think cricket writing has changed in any significant sense?
It's changed tremendously, and it had to because of the reasons I alluded to earlier. Yes. The fact that young people consume cricket live, they can see every angle. Yes. I had to, earlier cricket writers had to recreate the match for someone who had not watched it. Now you write around the game. But there's still a lot of outstanding cricket writing. Cricinfo has some first-rate cricket writing. Yes. I believe Gideon Haigh is the greatest cricket writer ever. Yes. Greater than Arlott or Cardus or James. I mean, James is Beyond the Boundary is the best cricket book ever written.
Single book.
But if you have a list of 10 books, there'll be 1 book by James and 2 or 3 by Gideon Haigh. Right. Okay. So there's a lot of some of the player writers. Michael Atherton is a very interesting writer. His columns are very perceptive. Ian Chappell. So there's a lot of good writing going on and a lot of good commentary too. Yeah.
Especially in terms of that sort of imaginative recreation, that sort of player. I think Osman Samiuddin is also
a wonderful writer. His book on Pakistani cricket is first rate.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Andrew Fidel Fernando, who writes on Sri Lanka, also another first rate writer. There's lots of good writers around the place. Yeah. Yes.
Of course.
And both write for Cricinfo. I mean, Cricinfo has produced so many good writers. Rahul Bhattacharya started writing.
Yes.
Sharda Ugra.
Of course.
Yeah, the first stable of writers that Cricinfo, and a lot of credit should go to the editor Sambit Bal, who has nurtured many of these people. Yeah.
And the wonderful thing is that once again, again, that's making best use of the internet. It's free. You get such high quality writing, and then when people get to read that sort of long essays using the internet's that common domain, that's something that I felt was really good development. So now we come to the question by Christina Jose. And her question is, what is the Indian public's attitude towards failed cricketing heroes? How do we perceive sportsmen like Vinod Kambli, Manoj Tiwari, Ajay Sharma, etc.? That's her question.
Yeah, I mean, you see, it could be a wonderful subject for a book. Vinod Kambli.
Yes.
There's a great book on an England cricketer called Harold Gimblett.
Okay.
Harold Gimblett played 2 test matches.
Okay.
One in, I think, 1935, one in 1950.
Okay.
He was a brilliant attacking batsman. He played for, I think, Somerset. And his first test match, his His second test match was played 15 years after his first, and that was the last time he played for England. And finally, he died in poverty and killed himself. And there's a beautiful book on Harold Gimlet by a wonderful writer called David Foote.
David,
I think followed, very fine writer.
Yes.
So he's written a book on Harold Gimlet, which is maybe called A Study in Failure or A Study in Tragedy or something like that. So Vinod Kamble is, really, though he got many hundreds and so on and so forth, but since the parallel between him and Tendulkar starting at the same time, yes, I mean, it's a very, I mean, I think Vinod Kamble more than anyone else.
Yes.
And maybe Azharuddin, a really good biography, Azharuddin, a really, Azharuddin figures in my book, as you know, Rakesh. I talk about meeting him in Parliament of all places on a Sunday afternoon. So, a really sensitive biography, Azharuddin, which is triumph and failure. Tragedy is, Kamble is more decline and unfulfilled promise and maybe being treated badly by the selectors. Possibly he should have gone more chances, he should be nurtured with more care by the cricketing administration. Yes. I mean, these are people who deserve good books here.
Yes.
And sensitively written books here.
Yes, sensitively written books, of course. Rather than books written with a particular agenda or something, and also books that should be written with care, right? Even if it's not a scholarly book, so the worst kind of sports journalism is something that is produced instantly. Right?
So, 2 books. I recommended David Foote's Harold Gimlet.
Harold Gimlet. Yes.
There's another book which I would recommend to all viewers. It's a study of those cricketers who committed suicide. It's a collective study by David Frith. It's called By Their Own Hand.
Yes.
So I think there's some 60 or 70 first-class cricketers who have committed suicide. I mean, for a variety of different reasons. And again, it's a very thoughtful, interesting book. And there should be Indian books of that kind. Yeah.
Of course. And so that the branches of literature can grow wider. Yes, of course. So now we have a few audience questions. We'll take a limited number of audience questions. So I will now hand over the proceedings to my colleagues, Rishmi Pillai and Lalita Joseph, who have been monitoring the questions. So they will now take over. Over to you, Rishmi ma'am and Lalita ma'am, please. Yes. Can we have the audience questions, Rishmi ma'am? Your mic is muted. Could you unmute? The mic is still muted.
Yeah. Just Rakesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. You.
Okay. I have a few questions, and there are 2 questions by Sucheta and Janaki, and I have tried to yoke the 2 questions because they look familiar. So this is the question by Sucheta. Cricket has always been viewed as signifying a kind of elite nationalist masculinity, right down to propagating difference to rules, modeling gentlemanly conduct, and an idealized manliness. Could you comment on the ways in which the contemporary celebration of aggression in Indian cricket has reconfigured this idea?
So, first of all, I'll come to the question of aggression. But first of all, one of the interesting transformations in Indian cricket is many more women playing, many more women watching, many more women writing about it. I mean, I mentioned Sharda Ugra earlier on, and she's arguably our most respected sports writer, not just about cricket. There's some outstanding cricketers in our women's cricket team. I endorse Rakesh's suggestion that the IPL can find a way of, actually making this, highlighting some of that. Women watching cricket matches. When I was young, they would not watch. Now they are 30 or 40% of those watching, discussing, debating. So overall, it's less patriarchal and macho cricket than it was when I was young. At the same time, of course, there's that aggression that is shown on the field by Indian cricketers, which was not shown earlier. This was kind of reserved for the Australians. And part of it is just it's so competitive and there's so much at stake. So if you can be, forthright on the field, but generous and accommodating outside, that's all right. But if you carry on that abrasiveness and aggression outside the field, for example, the arrogance that Virat Kohli has occasionally shown towards journalists, I think that is deeply unfortunate. But you play a game hard. You play a game to win. And there may have been earlier generations of Indian cricketers who were quite happy to focus on their personal performance. One of the salutary transformations in Indian cricket, there are two in the main team. When I was young, the Indian cricket team was terribly parochial. If Gavaskar was captain, you would be sure that a Bombay player would get preference over a Delhi player to be chosen. If Bedi was captain, Kapil Dev was captain, it may have been the reverse. If Venkat was captain, some Tamil player would get in. If Azhar was captain, Hyderabad spinner would be chosen over a Bengal spinner who was as good. So it's become less parochial and it's become more team-oriented. Sunil Gavaskar was happy if he scored 100 and his team lost. If Kohli scores 100 and his team loses, he'll be outraged. So I think that is because in that sense, I think in many ways, I'm not sure the masculinity and the machoism has increased. I think it's probably declined a little bit. I mean, for example, I'll give you one example about Kohli. I've criticized the superstar culture. But the fact that he's missing 3 test matches to be with his wife and she has her first child is the influence of feminism and nothing else. They are complaining, they are saying, does he not care for the country? No, he's setting an extraordinary example. Parenting is both parents. I mean, I grew up in a milieu when my wife took the main responsibility for raising our kids. In my parents' generation, my father did even less than I did. So what Kohli is doing, I think I hope I noticed this. He's not made a statement about it, but I think it's that he's conscious somewhere of the ugly sides of patriarchy.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, we have another question by Atish. He's asking, what is your stand on the gambling apps and cricketing greats present and past promoting these gambling apps?
So cricketers should not promote it. Like the board president should certainly not promote it. On gambling per se, I have not thought much about it, but it should be.
Okay. So, and we have a very light question by Jayant. He would like to know how many hours of sleep do you get a day? He's an avid reader of Professor Guha, and he wants to know how many hours you sleep a day.
Well, I sleep a full 8 or 9 hours, and I sleep a full 8 or 9 hours, so I have no issue about that. I listen to music to calm myself, classical music in the evenings. But I do work hard, and my working hard comes from my days as a cricketer, and particularly my days as a failed cricketer. If you are bowling in the college nets to Arun Lal, and for 3 hours you can't get through his defense, or you're bowling to Kiti Azad and he's hitting every other ball for 6, you try harder, you focus harder. So the many hours I put in the archives or writing, in many ways I owe to my early training as a cricketer. Enthusiastic but not very talented cricketer. I'm always trying to work harder.
We have a final question, the last question of the session by Krishna Jaga. He says that we have seen cricket transform from Test cricket over 5 days, sometimes to 60 hours ODI to T20. Where do you think cricket will evolve over the next 50 years? Will Test cricket survive?
It's an open question. A lot depends on the players. This generation of players still wants to prove themselves in a Test match. They don't want to be known just as T20 stars. But a time may come when the rewards of T20 and IPL are so great that the players themselves don't care for Test cricket. And when that happens, I think Test cricket will decline further and further, in importance. It will be truly sad. And I'm grateful that, I won't be around to see. I'll have departed this earth, when probably, before Test cricket does. And because it is, it always a far more fulfilling form of the sport, both for those who play and especially for those who watch, but also for those who play.
Okay, thank you, sir. Rakesh?
Yes.
We can.
So we reached the end of the session. In concluding the session, in saying my final brief word of thanks to you, I would like to use an analogy from your own book, The Commonwealth of Cricket. You spoke of how your uncle flagged down G.R. Vishwanath just so that he can, introduce his starry-eyed nephew to him, right? I'm sure that moment still resonates with you even now, right? So, and you say that is a sign of the times. And parallelly, I would say that, there are some good things still remaining about our times when a scholar of your standing would accept an invitation from a very humble rural college, answer so many emails, allot time to us, and spend so much time answering our questions. So I hope that, I hope that that sort of cricketing cultures may survive. This kind of academic cultures may survive. I can't thank you enough on behalf of our college, on behalf of our department, on my personal behalf. Thank you so much. It was as pleasurable as a spell of Chandrasekhar at his best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, dear all, this is towards our participants. So you have stuck with us for so many sessions, and have participated very actively. Our only hope is that you enjoyed them, you got some fun out of it, got some illumination out of it. Thank you so much. For those of you who have filled in the feedback links, your certificates will be sent out in the next 2 to 3 days. You will receive the e-certificates. Don't worry about them. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was an honor hosting all of you. Over to you, Rishmi ma'am.
Yes, dear participants, thank you so much for being with us for all the sessions and motivating us, asking wonderful questions. And it was really, really great to have all of you. And we had a wonderful lineup of speakers. So thank you very much. And as Rakesh said, your certificates will be sent to you in the coming days. And the feedback link is already there in the chat box. And those, yeah, so you can use the feedback link.